Hello, I'm Owen Ralph from Greenwoodside, and I want to talk a bit about making a social media plan. This is specifically for you as a content creator, for talking about things that you are creating. It's not so much for you as a person. If you use Twitter to vent all your political views and things, that's fine, but this probably isn't relevant to that area. It's also probably more specific to Facebook than any of the other platforms, although I think it is kind of universally applicable. So first, let's consider some of the problems which immediately face you when trying to put together a social media strategy. So the first thing is that social media can be incredibly time consuming when you're having to constantly create content and kind of find things to say, basically most days, forever. That takes up a lot of time. So it can be really important to find ways to reduce the amount of time that you're spending on that, so you leave you with more time to actually make the stuff. And the second issue is that it can just be quite overwhelming because, the world's pretty massive. There's a lot of stuff going on. You're doing a lot of stuff. It can be quite tricky to pin down kind of a sensible thing to say on a given day. So there are a couple of things which I want to suggest which might help resolve that a little bit for you. So the solution really is to establish some systems within your social media planning. There are two things that I particularly like to do, which I'm going to suggest. Firstly, that you have a check-in with yourself once a week. I quite like going to Costa, sitting down, doing the millennial thing with my laptop, and just kind of thinking about where I am with all my projects, what's coming up, what I need to talk about. And the second thing is to have some recurring structures in place so that you're not starting from a blank canvas every time, but you've actually got that what you might want to post, for example, on a Tuesday. If you've got that in mind, you don't have to do it every time, but if you find certain points in the week where you have a recurring theme or recurring kind of content strategy, then that can save you a lot of time trying to work things out from scratch. So another thing to consider is how often you're posting on each channel. There are lots of articles out there which propose kind of different regularity for different channels. I think really what it comes down to is two things on kind of two ends of the spectrum. Firstly, make sure what you're posting is interesting. Don't just post for the sake of it. But secondly, don't let your channel go quiet on any platform. Really, you don't really want to have 2 consecutive days where nothing happens, because then people start to lose interest. And particularly in this weird climate of June 2020, where we're still under lockdown, you need to be kind of constantly appearing in people's feeds and reminding them that you exist. So then, how to plan what you're actually going to post. I like to think of it as kind of starting from the big picture, from things which are kind of out of your control, a bit more global in nature, and then home it down to things which are in your control, aren't particularly date sensitive, and just kind of is a bit of creative freedom for you. So the first thing to consider, what is happening in the world on a given date? Twitter actually produces its own calendar, which can be quite useful for this. It's just a PDF download, which I'll link to below, which just has a kind of outline of big events which are likely to gain a lot of traction on social media, kind of public holidays, anything like that you might need to consider when planning your content so you don't accidentally clash with another whole conversation which kind of drowns out what you were trying to say in the first place. But also so that you can engage with it and maybe create content around it if you feel like that. And then if you home it down a little bit more to yourself, you say, what am I doing which is date sensitive? Have I got particular gigs coming up? Have I got an album release? And then just thinking about the particular timeline that goes along with that and the particular points that you need to hit with your social media communications. And then you can think about, what are you doing which is not so date sensitive? What creative ideas have you had that you want to put out on your channels? And when is it realistic to do that? And then finally, you always need to leave room for change and for being spontaneous. There's no point meticulously planning out every day of every week, because things are going to change and you're going to come up with clever ideas. And it's good to have a bit of flexibility. Just, again, don't leave too much flexibility or you might end up with days where nothing happens. But it's all about balancing out these different considerations. So I mentioned earlier about having some recurring ideas which happen kind of on particular days. So this is just a really useful way of not having to start from scratch every time, as I said. So for example, you might say, on Tuesdays, unless something else is happening, I'm going to release a cover song. Do a little video of that in your living room, post it. And that's quite a low pressure way of just making sure you've got ongoing content and letting your audience know what to expect from you as well. And it doesn't require huge amounts of planning. You just pick your song, you record it. And then, for example, you might say on a Thursday, I want to highlight another artist that I particularly like. You might share a video that you really like from them. And that could be a really nice way of connecting with other people, getting them to kind of combine your audiences a little bit. But again, it also just gives you that fixed point in the week so that you know what you're posting. More broadly, just thinking about what you could put in your schedule is just thinking about, what is it that I do? What are the different elements, the different facets of what I do, and what could make kind of good staple points in the week, which I use on a regular basis, unless something else is happening in the world. So, to recap then, start off by thinking about the world. What is it that's happening that you have no control over? Then think about what you're doing, which is date sensitive. What particular points do I need to hit in my social media strategy? Then think about other creative ideas you have. What do I want to do and when is it realistic to get them out? And then fill in the gaps with some recurring ideas that you think you can realistically do on a regular basis without too much trouble. So there we go. That's how I make a social media strategy. Hopefully it's helpful. If you want any more information on any of this, feel free to contact me at my email address below. And good luck.